Class full of meat, okay? We got one more class that I'm going to be in this series next week, and I'll be showing you how to use that spreadsheet I handed out and how to go about using that as a discussion guide. But today is the last of the meaty section, and we are finally going to do Nona's favorite topic, time. Time. And Ralph likes time too. Ralph says every time you start talking about time, I get a headache. So, anyway, so why time? What's the thing about time? What it boils down to is we have talked over the last 6 or 8 weeks about denominations breaking up and the church becoming this denomination, and then these folks believe something else and they go off and they form another denomination, different groups. And there was a number of different reasons that they did this, but there was a set of 3 or 4 or 5 reasons that seemed to keep showing up from basically from the start of the Protestant Reformation, 1500s, with John Calvin, all the way up to today. It's still happening today. That has to do with this, basically what we call Calvinism. In a nutshell, if you firmly believe that God is all-powerful, can do anything he wants, whenever he wants to, he can decide that you're going to be saved, and there's nothing you can do about it. Or you can decide you're not going to be saved, and there's nothing you can do for it. Then you're probably a Calvinist, okay? But then on the other side of the coin is, the Arminianists think, but we have free will. We have the ability to decide for ourselves, do I want to be saved? Do I not want to be saved? All right? Why is it such a problem? Why does it cause all these problems? Because you can read the Bible and find scripture that supports both sides, which makes it a problem. So we have had literally, hundreds and hundreds of years of this problem cropping up, and people trying to figure out how to kind of make this thing come together all right. And what I'd like to share with you is where I'm coming from. All right. From here on out, we're all interpreting Scripture, and likewise I am too. But this is the point of view that I take, and I wanted to share that with you because it literally helps me understand that guess what? You can actually find truth on both sides, and that they're logically compatible. There's a way of actually pulling this together. So what does it boil down to? It boils down to the difference between free will and predestination. If you are predestined, that means that God is all-powerful. And we all agree he's all-powerful, right? He's omnipotent, omnipotent, strength. He can do anything he wants, right? Wrong. The details is he can do anything that is logically possible that he wants to do. The key is logically possible. We all have laws that we have to obey. Like, for example, we live in a material world, a physical world. We have a thing called gravity. And if I drop that thing, there's a law operating. And it doesn't matter if I drop it twice or 3,000 times, it's going to drop, period. Law of gravity, I'm stuck with it, can't do anything with it. Where did it come from? Well, the law of gravity is a characteristic of matter. God created matter because matter has mass. One of the characteristics of bodies with mass is they attract each other, called gravity. And the law of gravity. Mass of one body times the mass of the other divided by the square root, the square that is between them. And there's the law of gravity, okay? But there are also some laws that were in existence before God created everything. Laws that even God has to obey. Like, for example, the laws of logic. Why would God have laws that he has to obey? Because the laws of logic are based upon the very characteristics of God himself. And you can't violate that which is you. So there are characteristics that God has that is just accepted characteristics, and one of them is the laws of logic. And we looked at many, many moons ago, we looked at the identity logic and laws of non-exclusion, middle, and then you can't disagree with yourself. These are all kinds of laws of logic, and even God has to obey those laws. For example, can God create a square circle? No, nobody can create a square circle. Because if it's square, it's not a circle. If it's a circle, it's not a square. Can God create a one-ended stick? No, it's logically impossible. Okay? So there are things that even God cannot do. And that's why the own law is based upon his own character. And that comes through logic. So let's put a little logic on top of this. Can you possibly have free will or predestination? Well, what exactly is free will? Free will says you can do what you want to do, whatever you want to do it, right? That's free will. Predestination says, God, it's already decided what you're going to do. You can decide whatever you want, but you're going my way. Can those two things be both true at the same time? Are those two truth statements that are compatible? Not really. It's hard using the laws of logic, the law of non-contradiction. I know you've heard me use this before. The law of non-contradiction says you cannot have a true statement that contradicts itself. If I am all-powerful and can do anything I want, anytime I want to do it, you don't have free will. If you have free will, guess what? Then I don't have the power to override that. So how do we square that? Well, God can have all power and can choose to give some of that power away, called free will. So we can in fact have an all-powerful God that has given away to his creation, to us, to mankind, free will. And he truly gave it to us. He said, I'm not going to take it back. You may choose to go to hell. You may choose to come to heaven. It's your choice. I'm not going to force you.
But that doesn't mean he cannot, but he will not.
He has already decided he won't. And I got to be careful with the words because we're playing some nuances here. All right? He has already decided that he will not bring it back. Because even if he thought he might, it wouldn't be free will. It's that distinct. Okay?
But
So
to say that he could not is not really correct.
there was a time when he said he would have said he could. But that time stopped when he created us, when he created the universe. I'll get to that. We're jumping ahead of Nona's favorite topic. Well, what if we did? All right, anyway. So free will versus predestination. All right, so why is free will necessary? Why do we even care? What do we need for free will for?
God wants us to love him.
Keyword, you hear it? L-O-V-E, love. Can you force someone to love you? Ladies, back when you were dating, maybe you had some guy that just kept nagging on you, and like, nag, I'll go out with you, go out with me, I know you'll love me. And after, time and time of, you don't want it. All I want to be is your friend. The friend, take a stake and drive it right through his heart. You just killed him. I just want to be your friend, okay? You can't make someone love you. Loving someone, and when I use the word love, I'm using the agape love, okay? The agape love says you're loving for what someone else's best is. When God created mankind, one of the things he told us to do was to multiply, go forth, populate the world. In order to do that, you have to have, as part of your very nature, a desire for self-preservation, at least until the age of procreation. At least until you can put a couple of kids on the ground, you want to hang around. Okay? That's just part of us. Which means that naturally, for us, love is loving who first? Us. Okay? And agape love is loving others. Okay? So agape love requires free will. We okay on that one? So that's why free will is necessary. And I think we already answered this. Oh, no. So what's God's first commandment?
Love him first.
Love God first. Love your Lord with all your heart and soul. Exactly. And your neighbor likewise. So the very, very first thing that he expects from us, demands from us, Commandment numero uno, love God. Well, how can he know that you love him if you don't have free will? He can't. In order for him to know that you have fulfilled his first commandment, you must have free will. Okay? So now we've got God, the all-impotent, omnipotent. I get it, yeah. That's a verbal slip, isn't it? Omnipotent. Okay. So now we've got an omnipotent God, all right? But you've got free will. So that causes some problems because you cannot force someone to love. So we agree that we need free will? Okay. What does free will do to us? Let's look at free will versus predestination. And on that chart that we've been using for the last couple of weeks, here it is, procreation, predestination. This basically says God has decided everything that you're going to do before you do it, and there's nothing you can do to change your mind, therefore you don't have free will. If you believe that, you're probably a Calvinist. If you don't, you're probably an Arminianist, or some combination thereof. And in every church, in every denomination, I suspect even in every building, in every church, there's probably a few people that kind of feel this way and kind of feel that way, and are really not sure. It could go either way, and on Tuesdays I believe this, and so it's a real mental problem. All right, moving along. We have to ask the question, is God goal-directed? Does he have a purpose? All right? If the idea is we want to get something done, don't we need something to get done? Don't we need a plan or a purpose? Does God have a purpose? If he's going to have a purpose that he gets fulfilled, what does he need?
A plan.
The power to make things happen. But he just gave it away to you as free will. You beginning to see the conflict? Yes, he has a purpose. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. About Isaiah 46:10, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times and things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. John 16:13, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth, for he will not speak on his own authority, but whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. Not only is there a purpose, but he's telling you what that purpose is even before you get there. And that's a problem we're going to look at. Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love the God and those who are called according to his purpose. All right? So now we've got God with a purpose, with the power to achieve that purpose regardless. But he gave away the ability to achieve that purpose potentially. He potentially gave away to you the ability to not do what he needs to get to his purpose. And he published it. He went ahead out there and actually published it. He told the Holy Spirit to inspire some folks to write this down on paper. We got a problem. We got to look at this conflict between free will and predestination. So, what we're asking is then, what does God know and when does he know it? Is he going to get his purpose done? Is he going to get his ultimate goal fulfilled? What does he know, or what can he do? And when does he know it, or when can he do it? All right? Sounds like a police novel. What does he know, and when did he know it?
Always.
Yeah, always. Okay. It's another word that's loaded. I got to be careful when I use it. Anytime you're dealing with words that have to do with time, there's always a little secret hook that comes in the back and bites you. All right, let's look at the different kinds of knowledge that God has. Everybody that is even somewhat semi-theological will believe that God has at least two kinds of knowledge. He knows everything that can be, is, will be, and in the future, what ends it up being. He can see to the future and see what it's going to be like. And there's some names for that. The first is called natural knowledge. Natural knowledge, and knowledge is knowledge of all the necessary truth statements. If it exists or will exist, God has knowledge of it at the beginning of time. Remember when I first talked about this a number of months ago? I used my own birth as an example, and I asked whether or not that on Tuesday, the 20th of March, in Bayshore, New York, in a hospital, public, I was born. Is that a true statement? Yes, it's a true statement. Well, I'm assuming my mother didn't lie to me, okay? I was there, but I don't specifically remember it. So yeah, that was a true statement. That was a true statement when it happened. It's still a true statement today. The question is, was it a true statement before it happened? And most people kind of scratched their head, went home and took an aspirin, okay? It is. A truth statement is a truth statement for all people, in all places, in all times. That's the definition of it. So that means it was true even before it happened. And guess what? God knew it. He knew it. So a truth statement, all possible truth statements. Now, statements that say stuff that's not true, God doesn't have to know. He probably doesn't. He didn't care. It's never going to happen. Why waste my mind about it? Okay? But if it's going to be true, either was, is, or will be true, he knows it. He's a very smart guy. He knows it all. Okay? Hang with me on this one. So, natural knowledge is the knowledge of all necessary truth statements. The word necessary is also key. It must happen at some time. That true statement must come into existence at some point. That's the first law of logic, identity. All right. At the end of this, he has free knowledge. Free knowledge is the full knowledge of the end state comprised of all the truth statements. Okay? What does that mean? That means God can jump forward in time. Remember, not the time that we experience, tense time, but untensed time. He can, excuse me, he can jump forward, look around and say, oh, okay, this is what it looks like now. But he knew that. How did he know that? Because he can see that future. We can't see it, but he can see it. So he has the ability, through this manipulation of time, to look forward and see what truth statements are true at the time in the future. Okay? And that's basically where all the prophecy comes from, or at least a lot of the prophecy. I get nervous when Q walks in the back. I can't take 5-minute warning today. Okay. So that's free knowledge. All right. Almost everybody understands and agrees with that. I'm going to go one step further. In my own beliefs, and I'm not alone. There's a lot of famous people that believe this also. Not because of me, but I because of them. I'm jumping ahead. Let me do this. Let me set up an example to try to help explain this later on. Yeah, here's the cue. So earlier I asked Joe what he had for breakfast. Well, first of all, I noticed you're sitting over there. You usually sit over there. Was it your free will to decide to sit over here? You could have, in fact, you probably could have sat up here, couldn't you?
No, one can sit on the front row.
Oh, no, bro. You probably could have sat back there, right? You had the free will to sit in 3 different places this morning, and you chose that one. That's awesome. Semi-free will.
Somebody thought I would need that. Not quite.
Very good. Okay. Here we come. You normally sit over there. What are you doing over here? Did you?
I try to sit by Virginia, yeah.
Did you sit there by free will this morning?
Yes.
Of course you did. You could have been over there. You could have been up here. Well,
Yeah.
Chris says you can't. But you did. You're sitting there, but your free will. You exercised your free will, and you sat there. Joe also had breakfast this morning. What did you have for breakfast?
Toast.
Toast. Is that breakfast every morning? Toast? What's some other breakfasts?
Bacon and eggs.
Bacon and eggs. And toast. For a little bit of toast. And your breakfast was? I love this. Go ahead, lay it on us.
We had scrambled eggs and ham with mangoes and muffins.
You know where we're going for breakfast tomorrow?
Well,
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Have you ever not had that particular kind of breakfast? Have you had a bowl of cereal?
so we've had it before.
Yeah.
What's that?
Cereal? No,
Sure,
we
no.
do not eat cereal
Don't
for breakfast.
do cereal.
No cereal.
Do you have mangoes every day?
No,
Don't have the mangoes.
not every day.
Not every day. Bottom line is, she chose to have that for breakfast on your own free will. And she may very well have chosen something else on her own free will. So Joe could have sat in any 3 different chairs. He could have had probably 6 different things for breakfast. 18. So there's 18 different scenarios that Joe could have done. Free will. And each and every one of those could be true. And each and every one of those things could have been done with complete free will. Okay? So hold on to your 18. You probably, I don't know how many chairs you could have sat in this morning.
Yeah.
Well, let's assume you could have sat in 3. And 2 different breakfasts, there's 6. So 6 times is 18. We're coming up with 100 different possibilities.
God knew I was going to make it.
You knew that. Did you invite him for breakfast? Ah, he brought the mangoes. I got it. Okay. So there's like, we're 2 people doing 2 things. Where I come in to sit and what I have for breakfast. We've got over 100 different possible scenarios. And each and every one of those scenarios can be completely, totally true and without violating anybody's free will. Okay? Now think about that. Kind of set that in the back. We're going to come back to it. So free will can be exercised all different kinds of ways and still be true. So that's my classroom this morning. We'll come back to it. All right, suppose I walked in here this morning and I see Joe sitting over there, Nona sitting back there. Here's the toast and there's the scrambled eggs with mangoes. Suppose I was able to do this last Sunday. Look forward and see this event. And suppose I then described this event and say, this is what it's going to be like next Sunday. Hey, it happened. I know it could happen. It's happening right now, right? So I can actually prophesy. I can forecast into the future what's going to happen. And you're going to go ahead and do it under your own free will, right? Not like we got it made in the shade. Any problems with that? Uh-oh. Can we change our minds?
Yeah.
Can Joe decide to have scrambled eggs and sit over there? That makes me a liar. Okay? He just changed his mind and I became a liar. Well, what about God? Can God change his mind?
He has.
It sure does look like it, doesn't it? It looks like he's kind of changed his mind here and there and yonder. So does anybody have free will? You see, we're beginning to complicate things here. That was all well and good until we start changing our mind. Uh-oh, here we go. Can prayer change God's mind?
Yes, it has happened. Sure. I cannot remember the man's name, but he was probably the.
Almost everybody here can think of some situation where it appears as that prayer has changed God's mind. Suppose God published the result before his mind was changed, and then you come along and pray for something different. He changes his mind, and now his publication, called the Bible, is wrong. Starting to get a little complicated, isn't it? Right? Which asks the question then, hey, does God lie? Whoops. Does God lie? Isn't that one of those characteristics of God? Those laws that he must follow because it is his very nature not be able to lie? Yeah. In fact, there's in Scripture, Malachi, I am the Lord, I don't change. Romans, indeed, let it be true, but every man's a liar. Titus, God who cannot lie, promised before time began. Hebrews, it is impossible for God to lie. God can't lie. We are tangling ourselves up in knots, folks. If we do this enough, we can end up splitting and becoming another denomination, with half on one side and half on the other. You see why this Calvinism, Arminianism kind of thing falls apart real quick? Well, how do you get around it? Let me tell you how I got around it. After many moons of studying on it. There's a guy by the name of Lucicius Molina. I'm not very good. My Italian is not very good. But anyway, so here's a Spanish Jesuit monk, Luis de Molina. And this goes all the way back to the 16th century. This guy's putting forth his ideas, mind you, about the same time as Luther and Calvin, okay? Well, obviously they're not talking to each other, but anyway. So here this guy comes along, and he comes up with some thoughts. He developed the thesis that God only has natural knowledge and free knowledge. He also has what's called middle knowledge, knowledge in between those two. And because God has middle knowledge, that takes care of a lot of the problems we just saw happening. So, natural, middle, and free. Three different kinds of knowledge. Natural knowledge, we looked at that already. Natural knowledge is the knowledge of all necessary truths. So if there's a true statement, and it must be true, and God knows it as a true statement, therefore, he knows everything that's naturally true. Middle knowledge, then, is the knowledge of all counterfactual conditional truths. Now, you know, I'm always going to lay a couple of big words on you. So here's your big words for the day. Counterfactual conditional truths. Conditional means basically what it says. If this, then this. That's the condition. That's a basic logical condition. If this is true, then this becomes true. If that is true, then that becomes true. These are all different conditions, okay? If you open the door before you walk through it, your nose won't hurt, okay? Those are conditions, all right? What about a counterfactual condition? A counterfactual condition is one which you know the counter to the fact that conditionally can be true. I'll give you an example. Matthew 11:23. Yeah, Matthew 11:23, or 22 and following. But I tell you, this is right out of Matthew now, but I tell you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon than for you. And you, Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? You will be brought down to Hades. For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. But I tell you that it will be more tolerable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom than for you. That is a conditional counterfactual. That is basically God saying, I did this, you responded by doing this. And I know for a fact that if you had done this instead, things would have been better. And that's a counterfactual. And that is the knowledge that God has that makes all of this come together. Because he not only knows what is true, he also knows what would have been true if you did something else. Okay? So if you did this and you're paying for it, well, if you'd done that, it would have been better. It's a counterfactual. So what is middle knowledge? Oh, I'm going to jump ahead to free. So middle knowledge then is the knowledge of everything that could be based on what you could have done if you had done it. And much of our free will comes from preconditions. Okay? There's usually cause and effect. By the way, cause and effect, that's one of those things that were around as a law before God created the universe. Okay? So even God has to deal with cause and effect, laws of logic, can't lie. You know, he's just as tied up as we are in some type places. Where I'm going is, I lost my train of thought. I do that a lot lately.
What would be the Calvinist view toward God having this mental knowledge?
I don't think it just didn't dawn on them. I have not found any literature that's Calvinistic based that said, we thought about Molina and decided that's what we're talking about. So if it's there, I don't know about it. It might have just like sailed right by, or maybe they never even heard about it. Anyway, that's terrible. I can't remember exactly the point I was going to make. If I remember, I'll pop it up later. All right. Okay. So God has the knowledge of everything that you, oh yeah, okay, preconditional. You get up in the morning and you sat here. Why did you sit here? Because you got up in the morning. If you didn't get up this morning, you wouldn't be sitting there. Okay? You had eggs or toast this morning because you had electric to toast the toast. If you didn't have electric, you wouldn't be eating toast. You'd be eating bread. Okay? So that's the preconditional things. Almost all of our free will, we think it's free, but it's really we are responding to what just happened. What just happened. All right? And God then knows, remember, if something happens, that's a true statement, and God already knows it under natural knowledge. So if God knows already everything that is happening, and he knows that if what that happening is was different, then you'd have done this and not that. You see where we're getting to? God now has the ability to literally look forward at every possibility. I said there was 100 different possibilities of where you sat and what you ate, where you sat and what you ate. 100 different possibilities, and every one of those possibilities was free will. But God has the ability to look ahead and say, well, I'm seeing mangoes on the shelf. I know what she's having breakfast. Okay? And I know that the only thing left in the house is bread. I know what he's having for breakfast. Okay? Because these counterfactuals. Well, if I know it's gonna, and he's gonna do that, hey, I can figure out where you're going, yeah.
Where does the thinking come in where God has created something and he regrets and he
Good question.
regrets what he has done?
Yeah, good question. Let me get back to it.
Genesis.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that for us appears as though it's a regression. Sometimes we have a choice between two things that are really, you know, I really don't like either one of them, but I gotta hold my nose and choose this way, which means I could be going down this way with free will and regretting it. I would have regretted going down this way too. Well, we'll look at it. This is why people need this lecture with headache. It's hard to get your head around all this stuff sometimes, particularly first thing in the morning. I'm toast. All right. So free knowledge is the ultimate knowledge of the way it all ends up. Okay? So we got natural knowledge. Now I know everything. I now have middle knowledge. I know how everything can come to be based on all the choices you could ever make. And by the way, I have the ability to know what the final state is. Well, how do you know what the final state is? How do I know what foreknowledge is? Because I'm God, and I am creating the universe, and I can pick any one of those hundreds or thousands or bajillions of scenarios, and that's the one I'm going to create. Once God decides which one of those almost infinite numbers of different variations, all with free will, he can pick, I like that one. Well, why would he pick that one? Because that one fulfills his purpose. He can look all the way through to the end purpose and say, if I pick this particular scenario, I know that thousands and millions and jillions of years from now, Joe's going to have toast. But that's okay. It still gets me to my purpose. So that's the one I'm going to pick. He is not going to pick the one where you eat the mangoes. Okay? Ain't going to happen. That's not a true statement. Okay, you hanging with me? Still with me? Okay, good. Deuteronomy 31, this is the foreknowledge. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, you're about to lie down with your fathers. He's talking to Moses. And then this people will rise and whore after the foreign gods among them in the land that they are entering, and they will, give me while I scroll down. I'm getting there. And they will forsake me and break my covenant that I have made with them. then my anger will be kindled against them again in that day, and I will forsake them and hide my face from them, and they will be devoured, and many evils and troubles will come upon them, so that they will say in that day, God, have not these evils come upon us, because our God is not amongst us. So there's one example, of which there's millions of examples, well, not millions, lots of examples in the Bible of foreknowledge, what appears to be knowledge. Why does that appear to be knowledge? Because he can look forward and see in that particular day, in that end state, free knowledge says, yep, that's what it looks like. These folks have really just fallen apart. I mean, they're over here, they're supposed to conquer and take over and be my people, and they are messing up big time. Well, but they're doing it free will. Yeah, I happen to know that. But I chose that route for them to go through. I knew they were going to go through that. I would have been very discouraged. I still am discouraged that they're going through that. But I happen to know that at the end of all of that, this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and lo and behold, I'm going to send my son to earth, and now we have a potential solution. So because this is so good, I'm going to be miserable about this, but I'm going to tolerate it because I chose for it to happen. All right? I didn't want to, but that was the one that got me to my purpose. All right. So that's the way we make free will and predestination compatible. But basically what happens is God defines a goal, an end state, that he wants and is logically possible. So what is the end state he wants? He wants his creation to spend eternity with him, go to heaven.
That's right.
Let's all come together and go to heaven. Come to my house, okay? Which, by the way, I'll just make a unashamedly plug, is the topic for my next class starting in January, heaven. But anyway, that's just a plug. So he wants everybody to come to heaven, but he knows not everybody will. But I suspect what happened is he figured out that if I go this route and this route, and over here, I will get the highest percentage of saved people. This will give me the biggest number of saved people if I go this way. And along the way, people are going to be doing everything by free will, and some of them ain't going to be happy. Most of them are not going to end up in the end state. Sorry. But this is the one that fulfilled my purpose. So that's the one I'm going to choose to create. So he analyzes every possible start to finish scenario using every person's free will decisions and actions, his factuals and the counterfactuals. Very important, you have to know the counterfactuals. And that's called build knowledge. And then he selects the one that best fits his desired goal. And he creates it. And what he creates then becomes free knowledge, becomes the end state. All right? So back to the classroom example. So then if I'm standing here and I see Joe over there having toast, Nona having her mangoes, I am witnessing a true statement, okay? But I could have forecast that last week, 2 weeks, 20 years ago, if I had God's middle knowledge. Well, I need all three. I need natural and middle. Because I'm standing here, I happen to be lucky enough to have free. I'm looking at it, okay? But if I had those knowledges, I could actually forecast what I'm seeing today and guarantee that she did it by free will. So back to the question about can you like God change his mind? Yes, he can change his mind, but when can he change it? Will prayer change God's direction, his purpose, where he's going? Well, yeah, it does. But when does he have to make that decision?
Before that?
Before he chooses the one he's going to create. So if we go back to creation, so here's some date in the long distant past, and God is sitting here going, I need to make a universe, and I need to put some guys in it and girls in it, and I need to have them be like this and like that, because I want to invite them all over to my house at the end, and I know maybe only 5 to 10% will show up, but hey, that's okay. And I'm going to use my natural knowledge to decide what's possible, my middle knowledge to make sure I know what everybody's going to do and how it's going to affect everybody else throughout all time, and then I'm going to choose it, and I'll have the free knowledge to know that it happened. So that is the point in time when God can change his mind, when he's making that decision. Once he's made that decision, will prayer change it? No, because he already knew whether or not you were going to say that prayer. He knew it back then. Anybody here has a choice of saying, shall I pray for his recovery or shall I pray for his death? Should I be nasty? Okay? Well, guess what? God knew what you were going to pray back when he created the universe. You may be thinking you're running under free will, but he knew that already. So all of the free will things you do, including praying for something to change, God's apparently changing his mind. Okay? Well, maybe 100 people, and then I'll burn down Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, okay, 50 people. Oh, maybe 10. I'll give you 10. Okay? Is he changing his mind? No. He decided that way back when. So at the moment he created it, he already created all the choices. So does that make free will and predestination compatible? Yes. It means that you can decide ahead of time, before you've created everything. You can make that, you can be the all-powerful God, and whatever you say is it. Final word, done. That's the one we're going to have. So yeah, the Calvinists can be true. But you can have free will to do it. The Arminianists can be true. And if you take that approach, I'm not saying this is biblical fact or scientific fact. I opened it with, this is my interpretation, my opinion. It's the way that I got comfortable with the concept of free will versus predestination. So if you kind of settle with this, if this is okay with you until something better comes along, which by the way describes my whole philosophy. I come to a point, I remember I am not a preacher, I'm not a Bible scholar, I'm an apologist, I work on facts and evidences and so forth and so on, and if new evidence comes along, I look at it. So as of right now, nothing has changed my mind yet that says this doesn't solve the problem, or at least give a possible solution to the problem.
Well, can we say then that you maybe put something on hold when, I cannot remember the name of the character in the Old Testament that was told he was going to die, turned his face to the wall, and he started praying, and God gave him, what, 15? I don't remember how many years later.
But he knew he was going to do that.
But it ultimately happened, he died.
So what you do is you have to look at that particular statement and say, all right, if he told him he was going to die, and then he allowed him not to die, why did he tell him? Did he tell him because he knew he was going to lie? Or was the telling of him something that would cause something else to happen? If he would not have changed his behavior, his thinking, his teaching, without being absolutely convinced this was going to happen, if you're trying to prove through miraculous operations that God exists, you have to absolutely believe that that miracle can happen. Science may say it can't happen, but that miracle just happened. Therefore, God exists. He's the only one that can do that. And you must believe that. And if he has to tell you you're going to die, I go back to the Hebrew and the Greek and find out whether or not that was an absolute given. I have to research that. But basically, that's where I'm coming from. God has the ability.
Maybe it was a human that told him he was going to die.
Whatever.
Going to die.
Yeah.
And he prayed to God, and he didn't die then, but he did die.
Yeah. Well,
when predestination is mentioned in the Bible, anytime something is mentioned in the Bible, people will take that and they'll take it out of context. You have to put it into context. Like I heard an atheist say that God loves atheists because it's mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that the atheists are fools because they don't believe God.
Yeah.
So,
let me cut you short. I'm moving over. I got one more slide. But you're right, cherry picking is not good. Okay, does everybody got it? Everybody got it? Then get it. Here's the t-shirt. If you want to walk away with the t-shirt, here's the t-shirt. You might be a Molinist if you think God is completely sovereign, God has knowledge of all things, and humanity has libertarian free will. Okay? So if you believe what I just said, on Amazon.com for less than $20 you can get the t-shirt. All right? Questions, comments? All right, next week we'll do just a quick review of the sheets that I handed out originally and make some suggestions on how you can use them when you're talking to other people. The week after that, Chris is over. Chris has got the lecture, and then this first Sunday in January, I'll come back and start a new topic. Are you heaven bound?